You have been deceived, not just by movies, music, and social narratives, but by the very instincts you trusted. From childhood, men are taught to see women as inherently selfless, gentle, and nurturing, their love portrayed as unconditional and incorruptible. But Carl Jung, the psychologist who dedicated his life to charting the depths of the human soul, discovered something that shattered this comforting story. Beneath the surface lies a force so instinctual, so calculating, that most men never realize it until the damage is already done. And when you see it clearly, the illusions of romance and idealized love will never hold the same weight again. This is not bitterness, it is survival. Think back. Have you known a woman who once seemed entirely devoted, almost angelic in her care, only to transform into someone cold and distant when you needed her loyalty most? Have you watched affection turn into indifference overnight, or seen tears used as a weapon that later revealed themselves to be part of a deeper script? Jung explained these shifts not as chance or malice, but as the eruption of the shadow, the hidden self every person carries. But in women, it often manifests in ways men are blind to until too late. Men often find themselves confused by this contradiction. The woman who adored them on one day suddenly recasting them as villains the next. Not for genuine betrayal, but for failing to uphold an unspoken contract. Jung wrote in his private notes, "The feminine persona is a masterpiece of disguise, not because deception is chosen, but because nature commands it." To him, what appeared to be duplicity was not intentional falsehood, but a survival instinct refined over millennia. Consider the way affection can vanish when a man falters in strength or confidence, as if devotion was contingent on him performing an unseen role. What appears as love is often a mirror reflecting what keeps her invested: success, confidence, stability, and proof of resilience. When those falter, so too does her loyalty. And this, Jung argued, is not personal betrayal. It is the unconscious mechanism of survival at work. The truth men struggle to accept is that much of what they experience as love is conditional. It is not the timeless devotion we imagine from poems and songs, but a biological contract tied to male utility. The irony is that women themselves are often unaware of it, believing their emotions to be pure while unconsciously governed by the shadow. Yet the result for men is the same. They are judged not for who they are in essence, but for what they provide. Jung described this as the trap of projection. Men take their own longing for deep connection and cast it onto a woman, mistaking her performance of vulnerability for true depth. This illusion binds men into relationships where they cling to the version of her they imagined, not the reality that emerges when tests, failures, and chaos inevitably come. And when that mask slips, the realization cuts deeper than betrayal. It feels like the woman herself has vanished, leaving only a reflection of what she once pretended to be. But this is only the surface. The patterns Jung uncovered go further than deception, deeper than conditional loyalty, because the shadow, once revealed, tells us not only what women do, but why they do it. And the purpose buried in those instincts is darker than most men are ready to face. And if you have ever wondered why love seems to shift without reason, why devotion vanishes after weakness, then you are about to see what Jung saw, a century ahead of his time. Jung observed that what men experience as sudden changes in women, devotion turning to distance, warmth hardening into coldness, is not random but patterned. It is the unconscious shadow at work, a hidden force that has evolved not to be kind, but to ensure survival. Think of the moments when a woman seemed to rewrite history itself, reshaping the story of your relationship in ways that left you bewildered. One day, you were the hero. The next, you were cast as the villain. The consistency of this phenomenon across countless relationships convinced Jung that it was not personal failure, but archetypal truth. To understand it, he turned to biology. For thousands of years, men survived by conquest, labor, and innovation, while women survived by mastering psychology, reading motive, and adapting their roles to secure protection and provision. While men evolved to create, women evolved to navigate. Jung noted in his reflections, "It is this necessity that makes deception less a moral choice and more a natural strategy. Just as a predator wears camouflage, the feminine persona became a mask designed to ensure survival. This explains why a woman's affection can feel transactional, why it rises when you are strong and fades when you falter. It is not that she consciously plots against you, but that her instincts measure your value against her needs, her tears, her tenderness, even her apparent fragility. These may not be deliberate lies, but they are tools refined by centuries of evolution. Think of the countless myths and legends where women's allure tested men's resolve. From Circe in Homer's Odyssey, who enchanted Odysseus' crew, to the biblical Delilah, who coaxed Samson into surrendering his strength. These stories endure because they capture the timeless truth Jung later articulated, the shadow beneath the smile. Jung called this dynamic the anima projection, the trap where a man mistakes his own yearning for love as proof of hers. He projects depth onto gestures that are, in reality, performances adapted to circumstance. That is why men often describe feeling as though they have been in love with someone who was never real. The persona, tailored to fit their desires, crumbled the moment it was no longer useful. Consider the silence that replaces affection, the sudden withdrawal that leaves you chasing the warmth that once seemed endless. This silent treatment is not random cruelty. It is an instinctual test, a shadow-driven mechanism to assess your resilience. If you collapse under it, her instincts record you as unfit. If you endure, you prove strength. It is less about malice than it is about unconscious survival coding. The pain of this realization is profound, because it means that many men have not been loved for who they truly are, but rather for what they provide. Safety, resources, confidence, and direction. When those falter, affection evaporates. When those shine, devotion returns. Jung argued that this explains why men feel a whiplash so sharp in relationships, because they confuse instinct-driven behavior for enduring devotion. Modern psychology has echoed this idea in more clinical terms. Evolutionary theorists like David Buss describe hypergamy, the drive in women to secure the highest value mate available, as an unconscious law of attraction. Jung anticipated this truth in his own language, calling it the maternal bargain, where loyalty is subconsciously tethered to a man's ability to provide. Just as men are instinctively drawn to youth and fertility, women are drawn to stability and strength. Neither chooses these impulses, but both are ruled by them. This reframing is not meant to demonize, but to explain, for as unsettling as it is, Jung insisted that the shadow acts beyond conscious control. Women do not wake each morning deciding to deceive. They follow patterns older than civilization itself, which is why he warned that without understanding this, men will continue to mistake performance for love and be destroyed by the illusions they themselves helped create. But there is a deeper revelation, for Jung did not stop at describing how women deceive. He pressed further, asking why this deception exists, what function it serves, and what it reveals about the hidden wall between appearance and reality. And when you grasp this darker layer, the way you see love, loyalty, and betrayal will never be the same. Jung's most disturbing insights came when he traced the instincts beneath the shadow to the evolutionary core. He concluded that female nature, when stripped of romantic illusions, operates as a survival contract. Affection, loyalty, and desire are bound not to ideals of unconditional love, but to the man's ability to provide strength, protection, and value. A woman's devotion, therefore, is rarely a constant. It is adaptive. When you succeed, she invests. When you falter, she withdraws. This is not cruelty, Jung insisted, but biology in motion. He called this the maternal bargain, the unconscious evaluation of a man's genetic and social worth. Just as men are drawn, without conscious choice, to beauty and fertility, women are drawn to status, strength, and competence. To Jung, the tragedy is not that women do this knowingly, but that they are often blind to their own instincts. As man is compelled to admire the bloom of youth, woman is compelled to despise weakness. He wrote, "It is not a philosophy, but a law of nature." Think of the patterns across history. In every society, women aligned themselves with men who could offer protection against chaos. In tribal cultures, warriors and hunters drew devotion. In agrarian societies, landowners and providers secured loyalty. In modern times, it is ambition, confidence, and resilience that dictate attraction. The context changes, but the contract remains. Even literature captures this truth. Jane Austen's novels, for all their romance, revolve around marriages shaped by wealth and social standing. Shakespeare's Lady Macbeth does not love weakness in her husband. She despises it because it threatens her survival through him. This is why relationships often feel unstable to men. When a woman seems to lose respect the moment he reveals vulnerability, when her admiration dims after he fails to meet expectations, he experiences it as betrayal. But Jung reframed it. She is not betraying him. She is obeying an instinct older than memory itself. This is why he described women as unconscious predators, not because they are malicious, but because their survival depends on evaluating, extracting, and, when necessary, exiting. You have felt this, even if you did not have words for it. The way her gaze brightened when you achieved, and dulled when you stumbled. The way she celebrated your strength but recoiled from your despair. The way love seemed contingent on your performance. These are not accidents. They are signatures of the survival contract. Modern science affirms what Jung hinted at. Studies in evolutionary psychology confirm that women's attraction fluctuates with perceived male value. Research shows respect and desires increase when men demonstrate confidence and competence, and decrease when they exhibit sustained weakness. This does not make women shallow. Jung argued, any more than men are shallow for desiring beauty. Both are bound by instinct, not malice. But this recognition carries a darker weight. Because if women act according to survival, then love as men imagine it. Pure, unconditional, unchanging. Maybe a myth. What most men call love is often negotiation. What they call loyalty is often adaptation. And what they call betrayal is often instinct taking its course. This truth is devastating because it reframes not just one relationship, but all relationships. Yet Jung warned that despair is not the answer. Instead, the man who understands this law is freed from illusions, for he no longer mistakes survival behavior for moral failing. He sees the shadow clearly and no longer fears it. And from this vantage point, he can learn the deeper lesson. The shadow is not meant to destroy men, but to test them. The woman's instinctual chaos is a mirror demanding proof of male resilience. If he collapses, he confirms her worst fear. If he endures, he earns a loyalty stronger than words. But knowledge alone is not enough. Jung's private reflections did not stop at diagnosis. They pointed to a weapon, a way for men not only to survive the shadow, but to bend it, to turn it from a trap into a tool. And when he described these laws, he gave men the blueprint to become unshakable. What follows are the revelations Jung left behind, the principles that separate those enslaved by female nature from those who stand beyond its reach. For Jung, the recognition of female nature's shadow was not meant to breed bitterness, but to carve a path toward liberation. He insisted that despairing men miss the point. To see the shadow clearly is to be free of it. To remain blind is to be ruled by it. And out of his most private reflections emerged 3 laws. Principles designed not to punish women, but to make men immune to manipulation. The first law is to become her mirror. A woman's shadow thrives on reaction. When she creates chaos, when she withdraws affection or tests your resolve, the typical man responds with pleading, anger, or desperate attempts to win her back. But Jung noted that nothing undermines the shadow more than stillness. When she lashes out, stand calm. When she plays victim, meet her with indifference. When she withholds affection, remain unmoved. This is not cruelty. It is physics. just as water shapes itself around stone. Female nature bends around the man who cannot be shaken. Ancient Stoics taught this too. Epictetus urged, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." The man who governs his response governs the dynamic itself. The second law is to outsource nothing. Jung warned that the modern man makes a fatal mistake when he hands his purpose, his therapy, or his moral compass to a woman. The moment a man entrusts his soul to the feminine, he ensures its suffocation. He observed, "History offers countless illustrations. The emperors undone by mistresses, the warriors tamed into weakness, the artists silenced by needing approval from those who could never supply it. Men who made women the arbiters of their identity found themselves emptied, while those who retained their inner direction, figures like Marcus Aurelius, who ruled with stoic clarity, or Nietzsche, who declared that he who has a why can bear almost anyhow, remained untouchable. The lesson is simple. Your mission, your discipline, your moral law must come from within. Anything else invites collapse. The third law is to weaponize your shadow. Jung's most radical claim was that power does not come from suppressing darkness, but from integrating it. Every man carries rage, lust, and fear of abandonment. Those who deny these forces become hollow, endlessly seeking validation. Those who master them become formidable. Channel your anger into discipline, your desire into creation, your loneliness into strength. The samurai of feudal Japan lived by this principle, transforming fear of death into unmatched composures in battle. A man is not complete until he has made his peace with the monster within. Jung reflected, "Women do not fear niceness. They fear men who have integrated both light and dark." When a man lives these laws, he becomes what Jung called dangerous, not in the sense of violence or cruelty, but in the sense that no shadow can ensnare him. He cannot be manipulated. Because he does not chase approval, he cannot be destabilized. Because he is anchored in himself, he cannot be discarded. Because he has already learned to stand alone. In such a man, love ceases to be desperation and becomes choice. Connection ceases to be slavery and becomes sovereignty. This was Jung's ultimate revelation, that a man who comprehends female nature is no longer bound by it. He sees affection not as unconditional, but as adaptive, and he respects it without mistaking it for permanence. He recognizes tests not as betrayal, but as instinct, and he answers them not with panic, but with composure. He accepts the shadow, not as enemy, but as teacher. If you have followed this far, you already feel the shift. The illusions have been torn away, and in their place stands a harsher but liberating truth. The world does not need men who beg for love or permission. It needs men who are whole, unshakable, and sovereign. Dangerous not through cruelty, but through clarity. Dangerous not because they dominate others, but because they cannot be controlled. Now the choice is yours. You can return to the illusions that culture offers, or you can step into the path Jung reserved for kings, warriors, and philosophers. You have seen the shadow. You have heard the laws. The only question that remains is how soon you will begin to live them.